All right. Hello, friends. So excited to see you. I see a couple of people have joined already. If you are here hanging with me live, drop a comment in, say hello. I can see numbers, but I don't know who you are. So I really appreciate if you just drop a line. And if we haven't met, just let me know what brings you here today. Well, obviously it's the awesome conversation that's about to go down, but I hope you know what I mean. That made no sense. Okay. I don't waste any time here. You guys know that. You are here because today I'm talking to my friend Brian about what's success. And he brings in so much awesome perspective. And as soon as I met him, and especially as we got to know each other, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to haul you onto a live with me because what you have to say is just so everyone needs to hear it. And Brian primarily works with sales professionals, but I think really every professional needs to sit in, take notes, and have a couple of eureka moments. So I'm not going to waste any time here. I'm going to bring Brian up on with me. Hello, Brian.
What's going on, Jennifer? Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'll try to be a cool producer who can put us in different places. So we already have Adam here. Adam has said hello. I agree. This is going to be awesome. I have been looking forward to this since I booked Brian to come hang out with me live.
Yeah, I'm pumped for it.
Obviously, for people over on YouTube, probably haven't met you. You don't have a YouTube channel yet, do you?
No. Other than a couple testimonials, I had to make one. But other than that, no, not yet.
Okay, cool. And we have Chris Grit Snark in the house. Awesome. Okay, so people on LinkedIn might know you, but for those of you who don't, if anyone is like, who is this Brian guy? Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I would characterize my life as, especially early on growing up, as I was definitely a box checker, meaning I was definitely felt life was all about checking society's boxes. So growing up, I grew up in an actually relatively affluent area. So we had a lot of pressure on us to replicate what our parents had given to us. So for me, it was checking the box of getting good grades in high school, getting good grades in college, going to a decent college, going to a decent business school, and then landing that job in finance on Wall Street. And that was from there, we thought we had it made in the shade at that point. But I hit a dead end. I was super burnt out. And for whatever reason, I wasn't very spiritual at the time. I wasn't really anything at the time. I really didn't know what to think, but decided that I was so burnt out of checking society's boxes. So on a whim almost, moved to San Francisco, joined a sales and leadership training company, and was really blessed to have been surrounded by a lot of amazing leaders that asked me some really big questions. Things like, if money were no object, what would you do then? Or, let's say you had $1 million in your bank account right now, what would you do for the rest of your life? Yeah. What really lights you up? Questions like that. So from there, I bounced around from sales positions a little bit here and there. I've invested a lot of money, time, and resources in myself too. Really going deeper and deeper with myself. A lot of it's been self-healing. A lot of it's been a journey of self-discovery. And so, ultimately, I got the inspiration to start my business now after working with a lot of mentors over some time, seeing the burnout, not only in the sales space, but a lot of what you talk about, Jennifer, in the regular corporate America as well. And so that's what's really inspired me to create what I've created.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, let's just get right into it. So, and just so everyone knows, I have a couple of questions that Brian and I discussed, but really we're just here to have a conversation, and we want you in the conversation. So first of all, just a question for the people. Brian talked about checking boxes. Could you relate to that at all? Let us know. There is a little bit of a lag, so I won't sit around and wait for it. But do let us know if that is something that you have felt in your life, and if you feel like you have to do certain things. Now, first question to lead us off. Society, Brian. Where are all these societal expectations coming from, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts early on. And so without getting too into the weeds, what's really interesting is 95% of our actions, and this isn't taught in school early on, so I think it's almost done strategically, but 95% of our actions today and our results and what we're doing today are formed between the ages of 0 and 7, 0 and 8. And so what ends up happening is when we're growing up, if you try to think back that far, you didn't really know who you were. And so as time wore on and you were around teachers, especially friends and classmates, family members, and TV in general, you slowly started to form your own identity. People told you who you were, whether you were athletic, you were smart, you were dumb, you were a good student, you were a bad student, you were good looking, you were ugly. And so that sort of formed early on. And so you're told what is good, what the rules are, and what are against the rules, what are bad. And so we carry this with us later on into our professional lives too. And so we feel like if we go outside of that, if we don't get good grades, if we don't make enough money, if we don't live up to society's expectations, that we won't be loved in the same way as the 6 or 7-year-old child was. So in a lot of the ways we grow up, but in a whole lot of more ways we don't grow up. And so with that is this box checking, and it's all based on the fear of not being enough, not being loved, not fitting in to that box. So that's where I believe a lot of it comes from, is that. Yeah.
No, it's gosh, I already want to ask you a million different things, because another thing that we've also been talking about that I feel like ties in, and we've been talking about this on LinkedIn lately, is identities. And your job title, and if you're not your job or the company that you work at, who are you? But I feel like all of those check boxes end up leading you to that point where it's I'm an investment banker, I'm a tech executive, I am my job. And then so first I want your opinion on that. And then second, actually, okay, answer that first, and then I have another direction to go in.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. I think it's because a lot of times we've gotten so much certainty from the external world that we haven't sought out who we are ourselves. And so what I mean by that is a lot of what I spoke about, someone tells you you're athletic, or you're good looking, or you're bad looking, or you get good grades, or you're smart. We're relying on society to tell us who we are. And so in the exact same way, if you walk up to somebody and you have a social conversation, maybe you're meeting at a happy hour for networking, that's one of the first questions that's asked, because in society today, we're filling in those blanks. And so from there, there's a lot of judgment involved for sure too. And so, and the reason being is because we haven't asked ourselves some of the big questions, like, what are the gifts I'm here to express to this world outside of that rat race? And so I think we associate with that because it's really easy, because it's the only answer we've been ever told. And I think that's a big piece of it. We haven't been asked some of these other questions. Yeah.
Awesome. And I realize that my internet connection is terrible. So if there's a delay or if I get kicked off, I'm doing my best. I think that every Thursday at 4:00, my internet company throttles my connection.
Throws it down on purpose. Yeah. No, I know.
It totally it's without a fail. Okay. Now, going back to the box checking, because I feel like that's something that does resonate for a lot of people. I know it definitely did for me. So when we first had a talk, and I was just oh my gosh, that is the best way to actually put that. Because that's what so many of us do. It's definitely what I did when I was younger. Did you always at what point did you realize that you were checking boxes that you didn't really want to check?
Yeah, I think, admittedly, when I think back to this too, I think I realized it pretty early on. I remember sitting in high school, working my ass off to get good grades, and sitting there and be like, this just sucks. And what would life be outside of this? But I didn't have answers to that. And I think that's the problem, is that a lot of us realize that we've hit a dead end, but we just don't know what the alternative is after that. So I think it was really glaring for me, like I mentioned, working on Wall Street for an internship. And a lot of that too had to do with the interview process and everything leading up to it too, because I think that was a really big thing for me too, just how canned and, I feel like I was putting on a costume and a mask whenever I was jumping in an interview, whenever I was going to work. And so I think that's when it was super glaring. because even at school, I could sort of be
Right.
myself and hang out with friends. But when you're in a job
Yeah.
8 to 9 hours a day, putting on a mask, it's a whole nother deal. So I think it was really glaring then.
Yeah, I remember when I was like 25 and I was working in a recruiting firm, and it was like formal attire. You had to wear a business suit every day. And I personally felt like a little kid playing dress up. Like that's what it felt like to me. We had a couple of good comments come in here just to put now we have a ghost, and this is because of LinkedIn permissions. External validation is a double-edged sword. I'm hearing what he's putting down. So totally. Answering details about yourself at a networking event. Yeah, I'm not relatable, but there is other ways and things and all of that fun stuff. Also, we have a couple of other friends here. So much identity of our self-worth is attached into our job and income. That's true.
100%. 100%.
Because like I personally talk about the job title.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that you talk about so well when asking for a raise too, when you're talking about income. Yeah. You know, like and a lot of us don't have the belief that we're worth a certain amount. And so it's funny, like when I take a look back at this, I'd like to hear your perspective on this too, like relating income to our worth. Yeah. A lot of times we give ourselves permission. This is my view of it. There's a reason why what ends up happening is our income goes up linearly, whether you're in sales, finance, accounting, what have you. And the reason being is because we give ourselves permission as time goes on. Like, all right, I'm 35, I'm turning 36. I made, $150,000 last year. So I'm turning 36. I'll give myself permission to earn another $10,000 this year. And so it goes up linearly because I think that's what society's told us. As you get older, you deserve a little bit more income. And that's my viewpoint of that. But I'd love to hear your perspective too on on what you've seen when asking for raises in that way.
So I have a hard time because a lot of the way that we talk about salary and negotiations and increases and offers is around getting paid what you're worth. You can't get paid what you're worth. It's not possible. Beautiful. Like you are worth an infinite amount of money. What you're getting paid for is the value of the work to the company. So they assess the value that you're bringing to the table against the value that they actually need. So it doesn't reflect you. And I feel like this is where the breakdown in identity comes. And especially when you're being underpaid, which I've been there. And it's like, well, am I not worth it? And then that starts to seep into our psyche. And then you layer in the fact that, your friends are out there throwing around money, buying designer or whatever. And you're like, but I'm not worth it. Like that's the subtext of that ball rolling, in my opinion. So I try really hard to not say worth and to completely detach income from person as much as possible. I mean, obviously the two are related, but that is generally how I approach that. And I think especially when you are in a negotiation, and I feel like this is true for a job offer, a promotion discussion, as much as if you're negotiating a sales contract, the more you divorce your value and your worthiness from the outcome of that, the better position you're actually in.
100%. 100%. And if I think you're exactly right too. I think that's what needs to happen first is unattachment to it. Because I think you're exactly right. Because I think it's a never-ending cycle. Then let's say you do get that $1 million raise, you are still ego-wise too attached to that number. Whether you got that number, so the same problem persists, but sort of on the other side of the spectrum. So I think you're exactly right. No, that's a really great point. I think there is a hidden step there that you bring up.
Yeah,
love that.
No, and I mean, and like you said, really, so if I made X amount this year, I should make Y amount next year, and it should obviously be more because you need more money, right? But do you need more? What? How does someone know when they have enough money? Is there enough?
It's so funny. I think this brings up another really great point that I think that we're brought up with. And so I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to what I think what's really important is, how we're brought up, like in school and what we're taught. So in economics class, for example, the first thing that we're taught, I'm going to go to scarcity now, is that the world is full of scarce resources. For me, that was the first sentence in my microeconomics textbook, and I took it again in college too. So I saw it twice. And so we're brought up this way, that life is a zero-sum game. And it's just not the case. I think that there's a lot of logical things that you can learn from economics. My uncle's an economist, and so is my aunt, actually. And so, and my dad, I guess, would consider himself one too. So I've been brought up with a lot of these things, especially from a logical standpoint. But I think that sentence in and of itself is such a problem. And so bringing it back to the conversation, I think what ends up happening then is we're always, because we feel like the world's full of scarce resources, we're always focused on what we lack by default. We're so focused on, we don't focus and appreciate what we have. We could have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Our 401ks could be jacked full. But later on, we're still focused on what we lack. We always need more and more and more and more. And we don't take a step back to appreciate what we have, who loves us, what we love, what we can appreciate. And it's I feel like that's the difference. That's the paradigm shift. But just like checking society's boxes, we are brought up with this scarce mindset of feeling like if someone else is winning, that means I'm losing. If someone's making money, it means I'm losing money. If I have a big L that day, then that means like I'm in fight or flight mode. And so it's a lot of our default mindset, our default programming that I think is a really great question. Like, how much money is enough? And I think asking yourself some of these questions, this line of questioning to yourself, I think that's where you start poking holes in your belief system. And I think that's what's really important. That's what I try to do anyway with people.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you noticed, last week I put a poll up on LinkedIn. And it was asking about, like, why do you stay in a job that makes you miserable? Or why have you stayed in a job that you were miserable? And like 50% of the responses was not having enough money to leave. But the second most popular response, with like 18 or 19%, was making too much money. So it was like a golden handcuff situation. So I thought it was very interesting that 3/4 of people, it was about money. And, then it was like 2/3, 1/3. It's fascinating to me because, like, again, like, money is an infinite resource. There's never enough, but it does trigger the scarcity of, if I don't have this, then, we're just kind of like in this finite mindset when it comes to job opportunities, to income, and to what success actually looks like. I have to ask you though, okay, so like me and you, we've jammed on like success on your own terms. I've talked about it here on my YouTube channel, on LinkedIn. I know that you talk about it on LinkedIn. Went out.
You're popping in and out. I do talk about it. You talk about it. That's where I got you.
I'm kind of back now.
Yeah, you're back now. I can see you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're riding.
It's hard to see on my end because like the stream actually looks fine, and then all of a sudden, sorry, Brian. I hope I don't, like, this happened a few weeks ago too, and I felt.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
No, so what I was asking was, so we both talk about defining your own version of success and pursuing your own version of success. I want to know for you, like, when you got to the point where you were ready to start unchecking boxes, how uncomfortable was that decision to make?
I think it's like, it's right up there. Ultimately, taking action, it's like right before death. Like it really feels that way. it really, really feels that way. And I think, I was admittedly was in a blessed position where I was young, single. I was really autonomous in general. I think at the time I just hit such a dead end that I was open to anything. And so I kept on. And by the way, I was helping salespeople through some of these things, and integrity is really important to me. So I'm like, I'm going to live it out too. If I'm going to be asking these questions, I need to go there too. So admittedly, I was really blessed in that way. Now, having said that, and that's not to create any limiting beliefs for anyone out there listening, but for me, it was, I was really blessed in that way. So, it was scary in a lot of ways to start my own business, for example, was scary. I think moving out to San Francisco without really knowing exactly what my role was, and exactly how much I'd be making too, after having so much certainty and security in my life up until that point, was, looking back on it, like, really scary. But I was just like, all right, here we go. So it was definitely, and then starting my own business, investing in myself, investing way more money than I thought was possible in myself, was definitely wild too. So there's this uneasy feeling, but what's really interesting is that you start getting used to that, over and over again. And you start realizing how much opens up to you as you continue to go with that feeling, get curious around that fear. And more than that, get excited about it too, because every single time I've done that, every single time I've taken a leap, whatever's been in my mind hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And so it makes me, distrust that negative narrator even more, which I think is ultimately positive. And in doing that, starting to trust myself more. And I think that's what's been really big for me, is trusting myself fully in any and all situations, because I've been there before. I felt that uneasiness feeling before, and it's almost like building a muscle in that way. So it's definitely like, it feels like you're about to literally jump off a cliff, like you're skydiving for sure. But it comes easier and easier as you do it. And again, it's the most liberating feeling that there is, that I've felt.
Yeah. There was this really good question that came in, and I want your opinion on this. Is meritocracy real, or is it a myth that's sold to us, or is it a gray area? I want to hear your take, Brian.
I think it's a myth that's sold to us. If I were to pick one or the other, now there is a gray area in there, but if I were to pick one or the other, I think everything is relative. Every single thing is relative. I mean, I've met a lot of really amazing people who make almost zero money, live in the woods, have a huge smile on their faces, and so do their children. And, again, I've been blessed to meet them to get a whole nother perspective. And from if those children were to go into kindergarten, they wouldn't be, or go through technically our school system, many of them, the way they're created now. And by the way, this is not hating on any teachers. It's not the teachers' fault. Teachers are amazing. They're doing their thing always. But I think it's a system that I think is sold to us, and that I think is all relative. Now, having said that, for some people, it's going to be a lot of people's destinies to what ends up feeling like checking a lot of these boxes, and that may feel good to them. But when a majority of the population is being fit into a box that isn't aligned, I think that's the problem. And so there is a balance with this, but I think it is a majority of it is a lie that no one realizes is a lie. So I'd go with like the second answer to that question, with like a little caveat saying that it is a gray area. And I think, again, I've been able to witness what joy and excitement look like, not having a lot of money. And so really blessed for that too.
Yeah. No, my take is like meritocracy in general is BS. I understand the reason for preaching it, but I think in practice it's flawed. And I think like so much, especially when we look into the dynamics of workplaces and human psychology, it doesn't work that way. It would work if like we were all like completely unbiased, the systems were completely fair. But, if promotions and career success came exclusively to who got the best degree or who worked the hardest or who did the most hours or whatever it was, the structures would look very different. Success or checking boxes.
Definitely.
At least from a career ladder perspective. That's
definitely,
my opinion on it.
Definitely. Pardon me for cutting you off. Because you're a little delayed there. But I think it goes back to the scarcity piece too, because there's always, when we're focused on what we lack, with the meritocracy, there's a never-ending ladder to climb. And so just like scarcity, there's a never-ending grasping of lack that we're always going after consistently.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, going after aligned goals is okay. So, of course, so long as you feel really good about why they light you up in the process of lighting you up. But I think checking boxes for the sake of living out in the future and grasping for more goes back to, pardon me, to that idea of scarcity. So definitely.
Yeah. So if someone's ready to make the leap, because I know there was a couple of people that DM'd me before we went live, like, okay, I am working on figuring out success and what that actually is. Where do you suggest people start that process of self-discovery? Because it is an inside job.
Yeah. And I think that's a great question. I think the first question, there's a couple things. I think number one is that what's really funny is a lot of times when I talk to people, and I'll get to your answer in a second, but sometimes I talk to people who are just really successful people, and I'll ask them a question like, what is life really about for you? And they won't have an answer to that. Or, in what do you want to experience in this lifetime? So something really, what I feel in default mode is like something really simple. And it's okay that people don't have answers to some of those questions. But having said that, they've been so caught up in checking those boxes that they haven't asked themselves those big questions. So there's a great follow on LinkedIn, by the way, guys. There's a guy named David Marlowe, the Ikigai guy. And I think he offers some great questions daily, and he offers a lot of great insights into this. But I think some really simple questions that are really important to ask are, if money were no object, what do you want to experience in this lifetime? How do you want to grow personally and professionally? And no matter how big or how small, there's nobody here judging you the answer to this question. A lot of people want to say, I want to go help children in Africa. And if that feels aligned, then awesome. But there's a reason why I want to leave a little caveat here is like, in what ways do you want to contribute? Do you want to contribute to the world in some way or form? Do you want to contribute to yourself and your family? What does that look like? And again, if money were no object, and get clear on what those look like first. Yeah. Outside of what you're doing right now. And if your answers to those questions, if you can't seek or experience the answers to those three with what you're doing 9 hours a day, what you'll be doing for a majority of your life, I think it's really important to get clear on what might. And there's one other question I want to ask too that I think is really important, and that is one's gifts. I define as the things that light you up, you personally, and also make an impact on others, no matter how big or how small. And everybody's experienced their gifts because it was something effortless. It was something that came with ease. It was something that flowed. Maybe it's having a deep conversation like this. Maybe it's helping someone out with something. Maybe it's speaking in front of people. But get clear on those things, those daily actions that light you up and make an impact on others too, that bring a smile to your face. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And find where those gifts are aligned with the answers to those three questions. What do you want to contribute? How do you want to grow? And what do you want to experience? And I think that's a really great start to get clear on, all right, what does my life look like outside of just earning money, just checking boxes, just trying to impress my parents?
Absolutely. Now, Jacob says, I'm super successful. I'm broke AF, but successful. Okay, maybe not. So I know he's trying to be cheeky there, but I want to call this out because I think that again, we connect money to success, but like, does having money make you successful? I don't know. Like that comes down to, again, like that your own definition, because I know people who feel super successful and they have enough money to get by. There's nothing excess. They're not out there buying Ferraris and yachts and mansions, but they are successful in their experience of life. Brian, I want your take on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it goes back to is the world's is the world of or is a meritocracy a lie? Just go back to that question. And remember, meritocracy is something that's subjective. And so I think as Jacob's just being hilarious. But I think it is true. I think it's everything is relative. And so what ends up happening is, again, we're brought up from a young age to believe that earning a lot of money will fill us up inside. And it's this lie ultimately that we've been brought up with. And it's so ingrained in ourselves, the subconscious, from the ages of 0 to 8, that it takes a while to break from this. It really does. Because now I meet a lot of people too. And I was this way also, where I was like, I know earning money won't bring me fulfillment and joy. And I'd say that out loud, but deep down, I didn't believe it. I was like, no, I still want to make millions. And so I think a lot of people now lie to themselves that they don't feel a certain way. So I think the first important thing is to recognize that, okay, I still do want to make money. And so to play it all out in that way. And you need to experience that earning money doesn't fill you up in order to understand and actually feel and experience that it doesn't light you up. And so I think experience is so important. But again, I think it's all relative. I go back to, there's a lot of people we see on social media, so that's what we feel like is a majority of the world. But I've met some amazing people that live in the mountains on almost nothing, that live down in Mexico on nothing, that are just dancing all the time, so happy. And it's for me, I've experienced people, and I've experienced joy myself without spending a dime a lot for a long period of time. So I just think it's all relative, but it takes a while to let go of some of these belief systems in the way you're talking about.
Some cheekiness in the comment. The thing that's coming up in the comments, though, is like a lot of people, I think it's because we have like our LinkedIn rebels are like, freedom is like it. But like, I also want to clarify too, like if you are here and you're like, I just want to make piles of money, and that will make me happy, because there is different roles that money obviously plays. Like, I don't think either of us is saying that with any level of judgment. Like I personally, like early in my career, I was like, okay, I'm just going to make as much money as possible, quite frankly, because I knew it would unlock freedom down the road to go and do other things. So sometimes like there is that give take, and it's all a matter of figuring out what path you actually want to walk on. So I guess that brings me to like a good point, because then we reach this duality of like, to a certain level, we're future tracking for this version of our life that we want to have, and the impact that we want to have, and legacy and all of that stuff. But then we're also living now. So like, how do we coexist?
Yeah.
With like the future vision?
Yeah, it's definitely a really great question. I think there are steps to it too, because no one, well, this is arguably, but no one's going to become enlightened and stay, present all the time overnight. So I think there's a dance between the two, and everybody has a specific dance. And what I mean by that is it's really important. And the best formula that I've found is to really get clear on what your gifts are and the people that you want to impact, no matter how big or how small, and what area and why. And no matter how scary or different, by scary, I mean how different it is from what you're doing now, really pursue that fully. And so I think when it comes to creating goals, it's why I think it's really important to have an idea when you go all the way out okay, what emotions do I want to feel the most of over this lifetime? Is it joy? Is it excitement? What are those things? And then you actually
Yeah.
know what has brought you joy and excitement up until this point, and it's living in your gifts, whatever those are, and it's impacting the people that light you up too.
Right.
And so it's really ultimately a pretty simple formula. When it comes to that, it's just the tough part gets to the point where if you're in a job right now and you have those golden handcuffs, what does pivoting look like? And so I think there's a dance too of practicing and enjoying the present, what you're doing now, enjoying the process, but going out every once in a while and coming back a little bit. And that's what I mean by the dance, going out and that like having some clarity around who you want to impact, but not feeling too attached to it. Sort of like the income piece that we brought up at the beginning of the conversation. So I think it's important to be clear, but unattached. And that was something my mentors always told me, is being committed and clear, but unattached. But again, I think it comes down to that formula, your gifts, the people you want to impact, and what brings you the most joy and excitement. And it really is that simple. The complication becomes, okay, how do I pivot to what I'm doing day to day now to that? And that's when your mind goes haywire because a lot of fears and stuff come up after that.
Yeah, like you start that process of self-sabotage because also like the known checks are the safe ones, right?
Definitely. And I think that there's a whole lot of uncertainty with jumping out of that. I actually hear this so often. And that is a lot of people are in roles right now that are okay. They're fine. Like they don't hate the people and this is, I think the grayer that a lot of people jump into is like, they don't hate the people that they work with. Right. They're fine. That their boss is okay. They make a really, they're really good at their job. AKA they're really what I call talented at it. These are skills acquired over time that aren't your gifts. And so you become really talented. And this is where I think the meritocracy becomes the trap and becomes sort of the lie, is that things are okay. You've got the house, your children are okay. You're saving up for maybe paying for college might be a little bit, but like everything is, you can go on your vacations, you can do all those things, and all those things are fine, by the way. But then when I have a conversation with someone who's in that position, and they know that their life is about something a little bit different in terms of the impact they want to make, that's where it's really hard for people to make that jump, because things are so certain and things aren't so bad. And that's okay. But what I find is actually the people who are really in the toxic workplaces that I know you talk a lot about, Jennifer, that's where I think, a lot of people do stay in that. Obviously, I know you have stories of that, you yourself, and even I do too. But I think creating enough leverage for someone to change is a lot easier when you're in a toxic workplace. Whereas if you're in something that's just what I call And so, there's a lot of certainty and security around that. And a willingness for people to want to stay, which is okay.
I think even to a certain even to a certain level that when someone's in a toxic workplace, it can also, when you pair a toxic workplace with it not being someone's gift, not being their purpose, I actually feel like that can make people feel more stuck. Because if you don't know what your gifts are and what success actually is to you, you're just like, okay, like I just have to live here and this is horrible and all places must be like this. And even when you're out of misalignment, and this is something that I definitely experienced at the end of my corporate days, the fact that I was living outside of my purpose made my job toxic.
Totally. And can you say a little bit more about that experience?
So it was like the conversations that I had, it was my nightly gripe session to my husband. Because I knew, so my path was always to start a company, and I know what the company was going to be. I knew kind of what I wanted to do, but I didn't know quite what it looked like. But I wanted to get to the top of the corporate ladder and learn how to run a company and scale and all that stuff on someone else's dime. And then I got to the point that I was like, okay, I'm going to start my company. But I got a job offer. It was very interesting. It was a really cool company, awesome people at the company, great leadership team. And I was like, I'm going to take it because there's, I think, some growing I can do here. And I think I can learn some more. And I just remember one night, I'm just like, I feel physically uncomfortable because I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I do not. And I feel so stuck. And like, it was, again, I don't want to say anything bad about that company. I think it was a great company, but I think like my attitude in there was toxic. And that made my experience not so good.
Definitely. And I think, and that's sort of, that's also, I think that's a little bit in between the two areas that I was talking about too, in that I think that's what comes up after a while. Once you're so sick of certainty and security, for a lot of people, a lot of people can tune that out. Part of me did, and that's okay too. Again, I want to make all this okay, but I think it's so interesting what you said about that is it's not necessarily the environment, but our external world's a reflection of our internal world. So if we feel like crap,
100%.
The world's going to feel like crap, and it's not necessarily any one person's fault. There isn't anything to point to necessarily. It's just the lack of alignment is there. And I think that's why asking some of these questions about what life's really about for you, I think are really important. But the big piece is the willingness to take action, even when there is some uncertainty around everything. And I think in that way, to your point, we always crave a certain amount of certainty. We need to have all steps in place for the plan B, for the company. And the reality is even if you do have all the steps, at least for me, none of those steps fall into place like you think they will. And so I think there's always going to be a little bit of uncertainty around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think especially like for people like me and you who kind of like we were the obedient box checkers for a good period of time, you also get used to just that I'm doing what I'm supposed to. And you have your plan B because, you're probably a type A overachiever in some regards. And walking away from surety or what feels sure is jarring. And actually, on that note, Morgan brought up a good point. She says, totally get that. I find myself split between two identities at the moment in transition until I can fully be in one. Brian, how often does this come up for the people that you work with?
So I mean, I'd probably ask a couple questions around that. But what I would say is that everybody has a choice. And so what ends up happening is our intuition or our soul or our, what like our when we're fully trusting ourselves, we know that we need to take action. And when we feel like we're caught between two identities, in my experience, that is our excuse in our minds for not taking action or following our intuition. And so it could be like, oh, and listen, Morgan, maybe right now you do feel that way. Maybe this is really true for you. But for me, I always felt like whenever I took the leap, I always felt like I was in transition between two identities or two places, of course. Now, in order to get from point A to point B, I had to take a step. And so I think for me anyway, and not to project, but for my experience, Morgan, I made up and my ego got very, or my overthinking mind or my safety mind or my safety and security fight or flight mind was coming up with a lot of reasons why I shouldn't follow my passion, shouldn't follow my intuition. And so whatever the case may be, I say just go for it. Whatever that new identity that's coming online, like take action towards that. Take action towards that. Because there's a reason why it's emerging. You can't step into it if you don't take a step. So that's been my experience in working with people and what occurred for me.
Yeah, no. And I think like, I want to loop it back to, and I don't want to be like all like gross and salesy, but there's also when you're going through those transitions, you can't go through those transitions totally by yourself. Like, I think there's obviously a lot of inner work that happens happens, but you also need external support. So like, is there books? Is there podcasts? Like Brian has talked about the investment that he makes into himself. Like I'm going through the same thing right now. Like I'm going through an up level. I'm in transition. So I'm like, okay, I need to hire a whole bunch of coaches right now to get me where I need to go. And that, you can do it without, but it is going to fast track and it is going to make the process a little bit easier. So like a quick plug, and especially maybe a little bit of a plug for Brian, because it's not gross because he's not doing it.
Yeah. I think.
But even leaning on friends and like, you're on LinkedIn, like your success squad, as I call it, like even just the circle you hang with can help lift you up and help you navigate that change.
Definitely. I think, one thing that I always find, one note on books and podcasts for me anyway, and I think it's just so true, is that what I found is that you can read and listen to books and podcasts, but they can't read and listen to you. And so for me, what it ended up becoming is I was overreading, I was over analyzing things, and it was just another excuse for my thinking mind. I'm like, all right, I know I should take action on this, but let me just read a book first about it. But in reality, I knew what I needed to do. It was to take imperfect action. And so I think that there's a lot of great books out there. Things like there are books by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., which have been really impactful for me to get clear on some of these attachments I'm talking about, mastery of self, mastery of love. Those have been really impactful for me. But I think Joe Dispenza too talks about a lot of the psychology around obviously the importance of meditation, but also where a lot of this stuff around the subconscious comes from. Bruce Lipton as well. So these are a lot of areas that I think are a lot of books that are really interesting in this regard. But to your point, Jennifer, I think you're exactly right. I think having a crew is so important. And there's this quote that I know gets thrown around a lot, but I think it's just so true. You are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. And I think it is so important to find a crew in that way. For me, putting skin in the game and investing time, money, resources into myself was an absolute game changer. It helped me, what I feel, and we won't know, but in terms of my growth, where I feel like I've gone, and obviously there's a lot more, but just given where I am right now, I'm certain that I've gotten very far in the last 5 years that probably would have taken me 20. And there's a lot I can say in that area, but I feel like investing even a little bit of skin in the game, something that'll make you uncomfortable, I feel like is really, really important, other than a book. And I think that there's so much information out there that we're on information overload sometimes. And I think
that's true. Good point.
Having a group or having a coach hold you a little bit accountable in that way, because it's not what you think, or and it is ultimately what you believe, but it's more about what you're doing and if you're acting or not. In a group, the people around you help you gain leverage to take action around this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've totally done the reading all the books thing. I think that's my default. That's why I laughed when you said it. But it's like, because your logic brain wants to kick in, right? And I think there's that discrepancy between our logic brain and then like our intuitive knowing, and that we disregard our intuitive knowing and we put too much trust into the logical knowing, if that makes any sense.
100%. And then we get on, we talk about the golden hamster wheel of life of checking boxes. Our minds, there's a reason why our external world's a reflection of our internal world. Our minds just start going and going. And, when I talk to I talk to so many really, really smart people that know themselves so well. There isn't a word I need to say. Like they know, there's something that they've already psychoanalyzed themselves 20 times over, and yet they're still in the same place. They've read all the books. They've, I'm victim of, of course I've done this too, but I think it's I think the best leaders, the best people out there really give you a nudge, a little push to take some action in some way
Yeah,
or form,
absolutely.
and not enough talking, which is an extension of thinking. I think it's all about doing. But yeah, I think in today's day and age, we're chronic overthinkers. And if I know you've seen some of my content, but overthinking is a disease. I think it's just the absolute worst.
Morgan, I have lots of skin in the game. Stop describing me 8 months ago. Yeah, I mean, it's all a process. I'm going to ask you like a weird generic question. So when we think about success and we think about life on our terms and like really figuring out who we are, our gifts and our purpose, what do you think, where do you see a lot of people making a mistake, getting it wrong, or just being completely under discussed in general?
Yeah. I think in terms of like discovering those things, like their gifts, their vision,
Yeah.
and those
Yeah.
pieces. Yeah, I think one thing that I've picked up on a lot for me personally, and I also see in others, which may or may not be a projection, but I think it's a lot of people. It goes back to when we were younger, between the ages of 0, 7, 0, and 8. And a lot of times we mistake what our parents, teachers, and kids told us because they're so ingrained in us, in us for what we actually want. And so I think at that time too, I think this is where I think a little bit of psychoanalysis could do, for some people that are unsure around this. I think that, there is a lot of value in getting clear on some of these things. Like, who did my parents, for example, who did my parents want me to be? For me, for example, I know my mom sees a lot of her dad in me. And so I know that growing up, and she always told me that growing up, and I know sometimes, I've really strayed. I guess we have a similar laugh, and he died at an early age. I never knew him, but she sees a lot of me and him, or him and me. And so I've really strayed away from that over the last couple years. And so for me personally, when I'm looking into my gifts, a lot of times I was mistaking, is this what my mom would love about me? Or is this what I truly want? And I think that's where it really gets interesting around that, because I think a lot of us want to live up to and it's no fault of our parents either at all. And my mom and I have talked about this too, and yet it's still there. And so I think that's something that's really important is taking a look at, a lot of people want to replicate what their parents want for them, or what their parents have created for them. And I think differentiating between that and really getting clear on, okay, what are these things that I've been brought up with, specifically parents, society, and all these things, and then what do I truly want? And maybe there is some overlap, and that's okay. But to get clear on those things, I think that's where a lot of people end up getting caught up and falling back into checking the boxes.
Yeah, no, I love how you differentiate. This is something that I go into, and like my version of this is like UAQ. But it's like you have talents that they can be learned. They might even be innate, but they're not necessarily the thing that you're supposed to focus on, because the thing that you are supposed to focus on also intersects with the thing that you actually love doing. And that, sparks joy, or however you want to say it. Because like I can be really good at a lot of things, and I think everyone here is good at a lot of things, or great even at a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that you do all of those things. Michael brings up a good point here. It's not that simple. Some people can't afford to work in the field that their purpose relates to. The world needs stitch stickers too.
Yeah, I mean, Michael's not wrong. And here's the thing is, and that's if you can't afford to, if you believe that you can't afford to do something, then then you can't afford to do it. Your thoughts shape your beliefs, your beliefs shape your actions shape your results. And I think, a lot of this I know probably sounded as I'm speaking, because a lot of this I'm really passionate about, a lot of this I've experienced and I feel like is really important to me. But, my goal isn't to convert anyone or get preachy. My goal ultimately is to speak to those who feel that something needs to change, but don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Feel like that they do feel trapped, but don't know exactly the next question to ask themselves or what the next step is. And I think for those that want to stay where they are and want to be ditch diggers and just feel like, all right, this is just me, this is what I'm going to do. And, maybe I don't like it. Maybe I do like it, whatever, this is what I'm doing. Then that's fine too. And I think what's really important is to shine light on an area where a lot of people aren't looking, that want to find something. And I think that's why, that's why a big part of the symbol I always think about is the lighthouse, the grounded pillar that shines light on areas where people aren't seeing. And so I think that's what's really important in all this.
Yeah. No, and like Ariel brings up a really good point here of like, I'm not one of the people who's like, yeah, like money mindset. Of course you can afford it. You just think that you can. Like money is a real thing in this world, and I'm not going to deny it. But we also make decisions. We make decisions about our lifestyle. We make decisions about our ambitions, what we actually want. So yes and no, but we also at the same point, like, and I think Brian just kind of touched on this, is like, some of us, like some people just want to go to work, get paid, and go and live their lives. And they don't care about what they do. And if that's what you want, there's like zero judgment. Again, like not everyone has to go through their entire life and their entire career feeling a purpose associated. Your purpose might have nothing to do with this work. Like I'm like a big hippie who believes in like reincarnation and karmatic lessons. And that's maybe not why you're here living this life. And that's cool. But then you probably haven't been sitting here listening to me and Brian for the last hour. I mean, maybe you have because you're a supporter and you're super cool or just curious or interested. But that's like ultimately, like, I feel like if that's your attention here in this conversation is a signal. If that is something that, you're like, oh, I really want to go do this thing. Like, or I mean, like, I'm very open. Like when I am retired, I'm going to retire in my 40s and I just want to go and be a cashier in a store. I love being a cashier in a store. It was the best job I ever had. It's so much fun. And that's what I really want to do. Now, I'm making enough money to be able to do that and like do the charity work and have a nonprofit and all of that stuff as well. So like but that's how I've structured my life. And that's how I've structured my goals, so that it's not either or either, but that's just me. Again, not necessarily like right for everyone, not necessarily right for anyone other than me. We have a certain degree of choice, not entirely. Again, there is real world constraints, but we 100%. Have little bits of it,
100%. No, definitely.
Now we are coming up on the hour. So just to like, as we start to close out, one, is there something that you really wanted to share today that I didn't ask you about already? And two, where can people find you if they haven't already connected with you or followed you or maybe curious about working with you?
Yeah, definitely. Two awesome questions. For the first piece, I think it's so important to understand that this is all a process and it's an unfolding process. And so trusting the process and being super patient and understanding that sometimes taking a step back from the go lifestyle gets you further faster when even when you don't feel like it will is so important. And so again, trust the process, trust the unfolding, and understand that if you had everything you wanted right now, where's the journey in that? Where's the fun in that? And what would life really be about for you then? And so understand that, you have a full life for a reason too. And I think a lot of people feel like they're in a hurry to get that thing, sort of like the scarcity. So just take a breath. Mm-hmm. It's all good if you're not clear on these things. Most people aren't. I'm still getting clear on a lot of things for sure. And so it's really important to understand that, as no one has all of their crap all together. So that's one thing, is just like relax, be patient. And the other piece is where to find me. You can connect with me or check out my content on LinkedIn. I post videos a few days a week. I post content every single weekday and on weekends as well. And you can catch me on right there at Brian J. Hines Coaching on Instagram, or you can check out my website at brianjhines.com.
Awesome. I'm going to have to like call you back on because there's just so much to talk about. Danny just reiterates, trust the process. And that's like really, I feel like for me, that was the hard part, but
it's so big. It's so big. It's huge. It's like that is, I mean, that's just so key. 100%.
I mean,
100%.
Well, and like going back to the whole like society thing, like society wants us to have the goals. They don't want us to enjoy the process of getting to the goals. And then no one mentions that once you get the goal, that there's another goal. So you're always running.
Totally.
Ariel,
thank you. Love you.
Thank you. And this is happening because of Ariel, and we all
100%. It's all because of her.
At her party. It was a universal moment that brought a whole bunch of awesome people together. And I'm so glad that I showed up to her Zoom party that day. And I am especially grateful for you joining me here today, Brian, and for putting up with all of the internet issues that I had.
Couldn't care less. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast for me. So thank you so much. I'm honored and so grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. So cool. If you guys are watching on YouTube, Brian is linked in the description. If you're on LinkedIn, I linked his name so that you can go follow him, connect, whatever you want to do. I would love to hear from everyone who has watched. If you can drop a comment, whether you're with us live right now or on the replay, what's your main takeaway? And what challenge has Brian put out there for you today, or what like wisdom bomb has inspired you to take some sort of action? I would really love to hear, and how I can cheer for you, how Brian can cheer for you as well if you're following him. Super curious to hear from you guys. Again, thank you so much, Brian. And I'm going to end the broadcast. Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome rest of your day.